What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also follow us on Facebook, iTunes, and Spotify. And look for us at talklouderpodcast.com. That's where you can get your swag and follow us on our various platforms. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and we've got a fun show for you this episode. We're going to bring in a friend of ours named Sean Weingartner, who is every bit the rock and roll nerd that me and Jason are. And I mean that in the best way possible. And Sean, besides being a musician and an avid record collector and a frequent concert goer, is completely obsessed with rock and roll. And the subject of our episode today is a book that he has. It's called Headbangers. And we all refer to it as simply the book because it's taken on an identity of its own. And all you have to say is the book, and we know what you're talking about. It's basically a reference book that lists hard rock and heavy metal bands from A to Z. It's got cross references, multiple glossaries. It's just this insane book that will send you down multiple rabbit holes. And we're going to pick Sean's brain about that on today's episode. Jason, when did you first meet Sean?
That date is escaping me. It was in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I want to say 2006, a Broken Teeth show. And he walks in with this book under his arm, and I don't see him coming in the door. I'm not looking for him because I don't know Sean yet. But as he's probably going to tell the story, it was probably early when the opening bands were on, kind of thing. And I was probably selling merch. And here's this guy approaching me, and he breaks out this book after he introduces himself. And he was a local. I mean, he moved to Austin, and just a couple of years later, he ended up moving to Austin, and that's how you know him, and that's how all of our friends here in Texas know Sean Weingartner.
Right.
But he's just one of those guys. Everyone falls in love with him as soon as they meet him. He's the sweetest guy. Like you pretty much read his bio already. He's one of us.
Yeah.
So that date was January 17th of 2006.
Wow.
Is when I met Sean, the day I met Sean. And like I said, it wasn't just a few years later that he ended up moving to Austin. So anyway, he approaches me with this book, Headbangers, the worldwide mega book of heavy metal bands. And I'm like blown away that this crazy ass, 600-page monster that is just A to Z demo tapes, LP releases, as far as like it gives a snippet history of any band you can think of that you love.
Right.
It's got bands. Once you crack it and start going into it, next thing you know, an hour has gone by because wow, there was a band called Ace. There was a band called Baboon. Oh, there was a band called, so you're just, you start to get into it, and you see references. You look up a band. Oh, cool. This band is in here. And check this out. You'll look up one band, and at the bottom of the paragraph, it'll say, also see, and then there's like 20 other bands listed. Well, guess what? Ace is listed, or Baboon is listed.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, there's this Kevin Bacon thing going on.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a great book. It's I call it voluminous. It's hefty. It's 500, 600 pages. It's like a brick. And Sean's gonna, enlighten us and share some stories about how he got the book, where the book comes from, and some of his adventures as far as getting the pages of it autographed by various band members. Let's get into our subject with Sean Weingartner. And here he is, our special guest on this episode of the Talk Louder podcast, Mr. Sean Weingartner. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining us today.
Man, thanks for having me on. It's quite a surprise. I feel honored to be here with two of my favorite people.
Well, thank you. The feeling's mutual, I'm sure. So let's first of all tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Let's start with where you're from, what first got you into rock and roll, and what continues to drive this sort of, I'm just going to call it an obsession that's turned you, basically, what turned you into the nerd you are today, just like me and Jason.
All right. So I'm from Southeast Virginia, just west of Virginia Beach. Lived there for 36 years, moved to Texas in late 06, Thanksgiving of 06. In those early years, I've got two older brothers. The middle brother, he was 6 years older than me, Robert. And when I was 7 or 8, he came home with a copy of Kiss Dressed to Kill and on vinyl. And I'm like, where'd you get that? And he goes, well, I stole it from Montgomery Ward's. And I'm looking at the cover and I'm like, well, why are these guys with clown makeup wearing gangster suits? And he's just like, shut the fuck up and listen to it. Okay. He puts it on, and pretty much if he liked something, I liked it. He was the next brother up, and I kind of followed him around. But he got me into, Priest in the late 70s that he stole. Alice Cooper records. Like thank God he was a thief.
Sounds like it.
But Uriah Heep, so much of the Zeppelin, I used to love Zeppelin at one point. I can't really listen to him anymore, but he really like turned on that switch for the heavier and darker side of music for me. Unfortunately, he died about 11 years ago. Shit happens, drugs happen, and it was something that he could never get away from. Yeah. But the legacy, it's because of him that I ended up how I am today with music. And it was really cool because he didn't really get into like the heavy metal side of things. So when I started being able to get into, 80s Priest and Maiden and Metal Church and King Diamond, I started making dubs of those cassettes when I'd see him, because he was kind of homeless sometimes. We would go a year or two without hearing from him, but I would just make these dubs. And then one day Robert would show up. It's like, hey man, here's a bag of tapes. Check them out. Tell me what you think. Like, he fell in love with Spreading the Disease by Anthrax. He just thought that was the greatest thing ever. Exodus, Pleasure of the Flesh, loved it. Metal Church, he just loved so much of the stuff I gave him. King Diamond, he loved it just because of the voice. And he's like, oh man, the guy's voice is annoying. I love it. I can fuck with my friends with this, So it's really, really through him that, that obsession started. Then, I'll even say that a lot of it had to do with the satanic panic of the 80s. I grew up a church kid, and me and my 2 or 3 best friends that I'm still best friends with now, we had a secret tape trade in Sunday school. We'd take Maiden tapes or King Diamond tapes or whatever and put them in our socks and then trade them during Sunday school. And we had the coolest Sunday school teacher. He's like, I know you kids aren't like sacrificing goats or doing whatever. I'm not saying anything to your parents. This guy named Dean Howell, he died about 20 years ago as well. But,
that's pretty amazing that, he's seeing that and not saying anything, and actually probably seeing that it says King Diamond or Merciful Fate, and there's probably an upside down cross somewhere. And that's amazing, because he knew you guys as kids enough to know that it was just music.
Yeah, and then we had to sit through the traveling preachers that would come through and show videos of Venom and Blue Oyster Cult, they called Satanic, and Twisted Sister and whatever. And all we're doing, we're just sitting there taking notes. like, oh man, what band is that they're showing? Okay,
it backfired. Yeah, total backfire. Yeah,
man, it opened up such a whole new world of stuff. So
yeah,
I wasn't like, I didn't really love it just because of being rebellious. I really love the music, and I love the darker side of it. And I always wanted to play drums. So in '84, I got a drum set too. So that if I'm going to play drums and I'm into heavy stuff, metal was where it was at.
So yeah, you that's a fairly common story. An older sibling kind of gets you interested in music, and then some of us just run with it and never let it go. And you're obviously one of those guys. And so we're talking today about the book. I just wanted to give people a little bit of background about you because Jason and I know you pretty well at this point. But um, moving ahead to the book, let's talk about the book. Where did you first acquire it? How long have you had your copy? You've been nice enough to give me a copy. Jason has a copy. Just tell us a little bit give us the background on the book.
So this book is called The Worldwide Mega Book of Heavy Metal Bands, written by a guy named Mark Hale, who I've never been able to find any information on whatsoever.
Weird.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you ever met the author, since you're obviously his biggest promoter. And
I have searched the world over, and I think it may have just been a pen name.
Okay.
I don't know, but I've never been able to find. I found like Mark Hale's on Facebook or MySpace or whatever, and it's never been the same one. So I don't know. I would love to just kind of hug that guy if I ever got to meet him.
Yeah.
So I was married briefly from 95 to 96, like 17 months, whatever. We were too young, blah, 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 same old sob story. My wife was like borderline genius, mathematician, could write with both hands, like write a sentence from the middle type crazy genius person. Wow. But she was a voracious reader. And we lived about a mile in our first apartment, a mile from the Chesapeake Library. So, she's going and checking out books, and I'm just like, going through the reference section, looking for heavy metal or rock and roll books, heavy metal books, whatever. And then one day I just see this thing, I see headbangers on the spine, and I'm like, oh, well, I've got to pull this out. And of course, libraries, you can't check out reference books.
Climbing over furniture to get to that, right?
Oddly enough, the librarian was an ex-girlfriend's mom. So I'm just like, I live a mile away. I'm not going to steal this book. I know it's a reference book. She goes, well, let me check to see how many times it's been checked out. Or, the thing still looked brand new, the copy that I pulled in there. She goes, just take it, bring it back in a week. If you want to take it back home again after that, fine. Just don't tell anybody that I'm letting you do that.
That's kind of this is getting juicy. I feel like I'm watching a movie now.
Yeah. You've crossed paths with some pretty gracious authority figures.
Yeah, I've been a pretty lucky guy.
You've had some cool enablers, yeah.
And I'm a good talker. I can kind of sweet talk my way into and out of trouble sometimes.
Businessman. You're a businessman.
That is my business. And I brought it home like all the time, and I just started reading it front to back and seeing how this thing cross-referenced bands, listed all the demos, the albums, and my nose was in it. Sure, it wasn't like reading, but it was information.
Yeah, so we should describe it for people. It's basically an archive. It's a reference book, and it goes alphabetical order and there's all kinds of heavy metal hard rock bands. Some of them are obscure you'd never heard of, and then there's the obvious superstars. And it's 500 pages, 500 plus pages, hardcover. It's a pretty hefty book, and it is, just as you described, an archive, almost an encyclopedia reference type thing. And the level of detail is pretty insane. I mean, it lists band members, who played what instrument, when their demos came out, what albums they've done, et cetera, et cetera. So go ahead. I just wanted to let people know what it is we're talking about a little bit.
Yeah. In the back, it's got, all the band listings. It's got all the people that were in the band. So if you want to, hey, I want to see what bands Jason McMaster was in, let me go look in the back, and it's going to cross-reference. It's going to show the number corresponding with each band name in there.
So let me interrupt for a second. So when you introduce someone to the book, like you go to let's create a scenario. You go to a show, and you have the book under your wing, like you always do. Like the first time I met you, you were walking into the venue with the book under your wing, and completely unassuming, you're approaching someone like they're a target because they're in the book, and you're probably going to, you get them to sign their
entry.
Yeah. Yeah, their page that they are presented.
Yeah.
If they're in there multiple times, you might have them sign multiple pages.
Yeah. So typically, and let's just take you for example. When I did meet you in January of 2006, Peppermint Beach Club, Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Bruce, drummer Broken Teeth, has that show poster framed under glass, hanging on his studio wall with a ticket stub. This very moment.
Yeah, I've still got the stub. I do not have a poster, but so little background. That day, my buddy who owns Skinny's Records, Norfolk, Virginia, had been open since '87 and still there, thankfully. Gives me a call and goes, "Hey, singer for Watchtower's new band is playing at the Beach Club tonight. I have a free ticket if you want to go." And I'm like, yeah, I think I do want to go to that. Not trying to give the stroke or anything, but and I told you this that night, massive Watchtower fan, energetic.
Well, bless his heart and bless yours. Here's the deal. When someone refers to me as the singer for Watchtower, that puts them in a different sort of like box than someone who says, "Hey, the singer for Dangerous Toys."
Right.
But it's the same when they say, "Hey, the singer for Broken Teeth." It's the same thing. It makes me sort of like, I can't help but put them in a certain box or category by the way they're referring to me.
Yeah, it's all where we came in the McMaster world.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's how they first knew about me. Right. I mean, obviously, whether they remember my name or not, they're able to see my name and say, "Oh, that's the singer for Watchtower. Hey, the singer for Watchtower. Oh, do you know the singer for Watch?" They're not saying my names. That's the funny part, is they see my name and they still say, "Oh, the singer for whatever," right?
Yeah, anyway, and I automatically said, "Oh, Jason McMaster. Yes, I'll be there." I knew the name just because
awesome.
That's the nerddom.
Awesome. None of it's bothersome at all. I just think that it's interesting that for someone to call me the singer for Watchtower makes me automatically go, "Okay, whoa, wait a minute." They go back
right
quite a ways, and that puts them, they're either a young fan who just discovered that, who doesn't recognize anything that I've done past 88.
Yeah. Right. There's a whole different level of nerddom if they recognize you as the guy from Watchtower versus the guy from Dangerous Toys.
You could call him hardcore.
Yeah.
Hey, that dude's hardcore.
And then you in turn, you recognize that and you go, "Oh, I got to get to know this person because they've done their homework."
That makes me think they probably heard about Watchtower by tape trading or a fanzine.
Yeah.
And not anything glossy at all.
So pick it up, Sean.
At a record store is how I found it. But
so you're going to meet Jason.
So walk into the Beach Club. Jason's standing in front of the massive Broken Teeth merch setup.
Da-da-da.
Like I picked that was a great evening for me, just all the way around. Just because I got just being able to meet Jason, like it was huge for me, just on a personal level, my love of Watchtower level.
Well, I didn't know how special you were until you ironically moved to Austin. But we'll tell that story later.
So, with Jason and with what I do with people that are in the book that I don't know, it's like, hey, I've got a few things, if you wouldn't mind signing them, including this book. And everybody's like, wait, what is this book? Only a few people have ever been like, "Oh yeah, I've got one of those," or "That's pretty cool." So, I always say, if you're in it, I'd like to get you to sign it. I'm not trying to sell it. This is a personal thing for me. If you want to describe it to me, feel free. I'm okay with that. Just let me get your ink in there. And with Jason, I did get you to sign it twice because there's a picture of Dangerous Toys that I had you sign. And then also in the Watchtower entry, I had you sign that spot. Mm-hmm. And then, whatever Watchtower CD or cassette that I had, I think I had the first Dangerous Toys cassette or something. just whatever my stack of nerddom that I bring along with events like that. You
Yes,
you
please.
took care of business and
that's why it was kind of a mind-blowing thing. It's like you're basically skimming through the book with me. Yeah, check this thing out. It's referencing you then and now, and it's like, and then I think that I even said, "Oh crap, I bet Paul's in here," and we looked up Dirty Looks, and of course Paul was in there. Did you get Paul to sign it that same night?
I did get Paul to sign it that
That's
night.
what I thought. So you went fishing and came back with fish. Someone said, "Go fish," and you said, "I won. I win. I got fish."
Yep. Yeah. And I talk about this a lot when I'm doing my metal files thing about how I go in for one and then I end up with a couple others that were just kind of randos.
Yep.
Those are like the pièce de résistance,
Right. Yeah. You're in a room and you've got a target, and then the next thing you know, there's someone walking by and go, "Hey, I think he's in here."
That's why I love going to San Antonio with the book, because every San Antonio band that may have just done a one-off demo is freaking in there. It's Death Tripper is in this book.
Saw that.
Yeah.
Which is insane. How is Death Tripper in there? Who knows about Death Tripper?
Well, let's talk about Mark Hale, even if that is a ghostwriter name. And we're going to probably talk about this, but I'll just jump in and say this now. Before we move on, I want to ask, it's actually Jared reminded me to ask, who was the very first signature you got in the book? And if you remember the day or year, the nerd stuff about it, tell us about it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that it was Paul Arnold and Sean Helsel from At War.
Oh, cool.
They're from Virginia Beach. So I grew up with these guys. I first met them in '86. A band that I used to go to their rehearsals to watch. They had a rehearsal spot next door. So I've known these guys since I was kids. We've been friends. When I first started doing my old Motorhead tribute, Capricorn USA, which we can talk about that later, how Jason was part of that as it brought it to Austin. Paul contacted me and said, "Hey, Sean and I are coming to your show tonight." And I was like, "Oh, great. You can get up and do the Hammer with us," because they covered the Hammer on one of the At War records. So we're playing this show, his outside show. And I just bring, Paul up and he sings the Hammer. And for me, like, again, I've got one of my favorite people in the world up on stage with me, just kicking it with my band. But that night, and that was probably 2003. That may have been the first one.
All right.
Oh, sorry. You know what? It's not the first one. We can go way further back. Wow.
Okay.
The Juices.
Yeah, good.
It was probably, now that I'm thinking about it, 98, 99. World Dane from Sanctuary.
Oh, kick ass.
I went to Richmond to go see them with Shadows Fall. And I showed up with that, and of course my Sanctuary nerddom, all my Sanctuary crap. And just like everybody, what is this book? Tell me about this. Where can I get one? Kind of thing. That was pre-Amazon, but World may have been the first one. Man, thank you for asking that question, because I thought
that was from our producer Jared. Was like, got to talk about the very first one, because it sort of started an entire domino effect. Right. Now I want David to jump in here in a second after I sort of like, you graciously gifted Metal Dave and I our own copies of this book. I don't remember when exactly you gave me this. It was sometime after you, of course, moved to Austin. Yeah. But what a Jip Dave's is signed and mine's not, but we'll have to talk about that later. Thanks a lot, Sean. I know who you love more. So
I had to
I
pay
want to
for
talk
that
about
signature,
this.
by the way.
I want to talk about this real quick, and then I want Metal Dave to chime in. So here's the deal. When do you think this, Sean? When do you think this guy started collecting demo tapes, vinyl, fanzines, making phone calls, and putting everything in a timeline and in a fashionable order, documenting not only the names of everyone in the band, the dates, years, uh, index of labels and fanzines and radio stations, and it's all in the index in the back. This guy went ballistic on this pre-internet. I mean, what year do you think he started this?
He had to have started it like 84, 85.
Okay, that's so when you think about tape trading, this is a part of that. This book is a part of the legacy, the legend, and the lore, the campfire stories of nerds who gather all the time, whether it be in person or online in groups and forums, where they talk about collecting demo cassettes of underground bands because they're all in here. They're all in here. I want Dave to this question is kind of for Dave. What did you think when you basically wrapped your head around this book? Because you're a journalist, you know the work that it took to put this together.
Yeah, I was just amazed at the thoroughness, I guess would be the word. How complete it is, especially for the time that it came out. Like you said, Jason, this is pre-internet, so this guy did his research was manual labor. It wasn't Googling a bunch of stuff. This was hardcore research, very time consuming. Uh, Obviously a fan, obviously very enthusiastic about it, and then uh, I really like we've talked a couple times about the glossary in the back, but I want to make it clear to our listeners that there's actually multiple glossaries in the back, so you can look up an individual, for example, Scott Ian from Anthrax. You can look him up by name and find all the pages he's listed on and the bands he's played in. You can look up, there's a glossary dedicated to just band names. There's a glossary dedicated to performers' names. The I think there's one about, dedicated to the countries that, which bands might have come from which country. I mean, it's a very, I mean, they're splitting hairs left and right, and it's really cool. So again, it's this degree of this level of detail that this person went through. And we should say that he got Ted Nugent to write the foreword. So that was kind of cool, I thought, because it is a reference book. It never was intended to be like a bestseller at your local bookstore. So this guy must have had some clout of some sort, besides just being a fan. So I was just impressed with the whole thing because I'm a total nerd, and as you said, Jason, I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, I'm a reader. So I really appreciate anything that sort of catalogs music to the degree that this does, because
I,
it's a nerd's Bible for
I
sure.
yeah, I was to just add to our words here. Uh, it makes me wonder, like, how popular this thing really is. How many copies are actually floating around? I want Sean to talk about its availability or lack thereof here
Yeah,
in a second. But all of these guys who, have walls of demo cassettes from, going as far back as probably 81, 82, 83, and then just like they probably, people who are proud of their demo, from like if they have, No Life Till Leather or in every band from the Bay Area's, demo tape that's actually a cassette with a hand drawn logo, et cetera, et cetera. You know, do they even know about this? Because basically their collection is right here.
yeah, that's a good point. We should ask Sean. So how many times have you approached somebody to have them sign this book, and they're just sort of like taken aback by the fact that this thing even exists. Because again, it's not the kind of thing that's on a shelf at your local bookstore. It was intended as a reference book. So Jason's point is a good one. How many of these people do you approach and they go, I've never seen this. Where'd you get this? You got any stories like that?
Yeah, it's probably a good, 85 to 90%, because I've got like 300 and some odd, 400 signatures in here now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Just everybody, except for very few, are just like, what is this? One of my favorite ones, it was Sebastian Bach. And it was at the Cat House reunion show that Jason played in Irvine like 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, whenever that was. And I bought the VIP just so I could get like the stack of signatures in there. And, they had all the bands that would line up, sit at the table. We'd get ushered through. Well, Sebastian was having no parts of that. He comes out, and he's a tall guy. He's like 6'2", 6'3". So he stands out above the crowd. And of course, all the girls are like, oh my God, Sebastian Bach. I'm just hanging back, and they're just like getting pictures, whatever. And I'm just hanging back, and I've got the book open to like the Skid Row page. And then he just looks over the crowd and just sees me standing there, just kind of hanging back. And he goes, and if you've ever heard him talk, he's got kind of a higher pitched voice. And he goes, hey man, what's that? And I was like, oh, this old thing? I was like, just this book on metal, but you're in it. And I was just going to get you to sign it when you get a moment. And he goes, hey, let this guy in. I'm like, no, he goes, no, come here. Let me see what this thing is. So he looks through it and he goes, wow, they got all the shit right about me. And he goes, they got Kiss in there, right? And I was like, oh yeah, it's like 2 pages of Kiss, history in there.
Yeah.
And he's like, tell me where I can get one. So I pulled a little piece of paper out and just wrote the full name down and said Amazon. And I just shoved it in his pants pocket and I just went, go there. And he goes, man, that's cool. He goes, it's the coolest thing I've seen all day. Thank you for that.
I bet he has it. I bet he's got it by now.
I bet he does.
Yeah. So I'm just to talk about Baz for a second. His short time with Madam X, I'm sure, is documented in the book, isn't it, Sean?
I was just going to go there.
Yeah, it probably is.
Let's test the book. Let's stump the trunk, as it were, because this book will stump the trunk 1,000 times over.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm. You know who it didn't stump, and he kept trying to stump it, was Scott Ian.
Scott Ian can't stump Scott Ian. He knows his.
Well, he was trying to stump me when I met him. He wasn't the nicest person in the world when I met him, and that's a story for another time.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
But had him and Charlie and Frankie and Joey all signing at the same time, and he goes,
"That's cool."
And he goes, "Oh, what is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a metal book. Get you sign this." He goes, "Well, I bet Loudness isn't in there." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, Loudness was on a major label. Of course
they're in here.
They were in Atlantic Records in the U.S. and Victor and whatever, nerding out." And then he starts rambling off like a couple other like pseudo underground bands. I was like, "No, it's in there." I was like, "You got to go deeper than that." And he was just starting to get frustrated, and he was just like, he threw. What was the other band he threw out? And I was like,
he was just without thinking, well, I'm going to stump the book. He's just going, oh yeah, well, I bet. Oh yeah, well, I bet, without really even starting a game.
Right.
Like I think this is a good game starter, not like go, oh, that thing sucks. I bet so and so's not in there. How dare they?
So
right? Yeah, that's exactly how he was. And it was like, whatever, all right. But I can't remember. There was one specific band that was like a little deeper. New York and New Jersey band or something. And he goes, well, they can't be in there. And I just went, what up?
Yeah, read them and weep.
Yeah.
He had enough of my bullshit at that point.
Yeah. Well, it's nerd against nerd.
Right.
And the swords are already sharp because you're a nerd. So swords are always sharp before they leave the house. So
and he is in here for Madam X.
Yes, I'm looking at it. It's on page 204, reference number 1722.
Detroit.
Batamex, Detroit, Michigan, originally, 1982. It goes. This is, of course, in the before times of before Vixen, right? When Roxy was with
Frucci.
her sister, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Sebastian was 86.
Yeah, so coming down from Canada to Detroit, because it's right
Yes,
across the bridge.
September 86 is when Baz was doing that. And it looks like there's a record that came out just before that, in the same year of 86, called We Reserve the Right.
Yeah, 84 is when that record was out.
It was on Jet, and that doesn't have Baz on it.
So Jason, we're testing the book. So so go to Armored Saint. Now this is me playing devil's advocate. This is me being a
I love
journalist.
it. I love it. I love it. I'm playing the game.
This
Yep,
is
I love
this
the
is
game.
me being a journalistic snob. Look at the Armored Saint photo and tell me what's wrong with it.
Oh, I will. Just stand by. Sean, don't blow it for me.
No, he's making me look too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that's good.
There's actually two things wrong. There's two photos of Armored Saint, and there is two things wrong with the captions.
You want me to look at the photos?
Yeah, just the photos. So read the captions and tell me what's wrong with the top.
Oh,
photo.
well, they got the left to right wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they got
it's Joey all the way on the left, and yeah, they got those mixed up.
right. They transposed the IDs on John Bush and Joey.
Right. Well, 4 of the original members have the same hair.
Yeah.
So that's what they're referring to.
True. So now look at, I believe it's the photo beneath it, and this one's a little more difficult to catch, but see if you can find it. What's the mistake?
Well, they got the left to right correct.
That's right. Yes. Correct.
The photo courtesy of Metal Blade. I don't think anything.
No.
But they're saying, say again.
The photo's not reversed.
Now, I'm gonna give it to you guys.
Okay.
Dave Pritchard's name is misspelled.
Oh yeah. See, I wouldn't even that's not even.
So let me just show.
You're a speller, and I'm not a speller.
So let me just show, because
Armored
on their own signed both photos.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Do you have Dave Pritchard in there?
No, I never saw him with Pritchard.
Okay. I was lucky enough to hang out with him a handful of times. He was.
Do you know how many times I've heard people say that you look like Dave Pritchard?
Oh, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
John Bush. I mean, the first time I ever met those guys, and he was like, Pritchard wasn't even in the room, and Bush was like, "Man, you kind of look like Dave." Weird. And then I think me and Dave took some photos together, and like people were like, "Oh, you guys are long lost brothers." It's like me and Stuart from Igniter. We really have some resemblance going on. It's the red hair and the freckles and stuff, man.
I could see that.
And thanks to Jason and Jeff Duncan now with Armored Saint.
Yeah.
That's how I got that connection when they did that San Antonio show with Saxon and Evil United. Oh, yeah. So both of y'all just kind of walked me in. You both came to the door at the same time and walked me in, and we all got to hang out. One of the things that, and Jeff talks about this all the time, because a lot of people think that Jeff Duncan replaced Pritchard in the band, but he did not. He was in the band at the same time.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was at the same time. There's a
Germany show on YouTube of those two on stage together.
It was rare, and it was, I think, short-lived, but Phil had not been asked to come back yet.
Right. So it was Dave and Jeff together on stage for a little while, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But Jeff, people always say, "Well, you replaced Pritchard," and he goes, "No, I did not."
Right.
So, Sean, I wanted to ask you, and I want to get back to testing the book. I don't want to lose that, but I've got something just crossed my mind as you were speaking about lugging this book into venues. Have you ever had an issue getting it into a venue? Like has security or some door guy ever said, dude, you can't bring that in here?
So I've got this, I call it the Merce, the man purse, the Merce, this little black bag with a shoulder strap. Because just holding this thing up under your arm for 2 or 3 hours is a pain in the ass.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you should have like a custom like metal like some kind of like Vikings purse for this, because
Covered in
it's
patches.
a hard rock bag, you know what I mean?
So when I'm trying to go through security with that, they always want to open it up and they just check all the pockets and they just see a bunch of Sharpies and guitar picks and the book most of the time. So never really had any trouble getting it in. You know, it's like, hey, I'm not going to use this as a weapon. It's
Right.
worth way more than, trying to use it as a bat with somebody.
That's why I asked, because it's pretty hefty. You could do some damage with it if you wanted to go nuts on somebody with that. But yeah, I was just curious because I know you take this with you religiously, and you take it, I'm sure, to not just local gigs, but you fly out to Mexico City, and you go on airplanes to go to gigs and stuff like that. So you've probably dealt with multiple different levels of security in different states and different countries and that sort of thing. So I was just curious if you ever had an issue getting it into the venue.
Yeah, haven't taken it out of the country yet. Just because I'm a little scared that something may happen to it.
Yeah.
I could have taken it to Europe for that Keep It True show that Jason and I were at together a couple of years ago, and gotten, Anthem and all these other great,
you could have got 50 plus just from the ilk of, there were people there at an event like at a German metal festival. There's people who are not performing that are just hanging out, that you recognize them and would be able to get a signature.
Yeah, my German friends there were like, oh, that guy was in, the German Vendetta or blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like,
right.
Oh,
right. Yeah, you're kicking yourself because
lugging that thing around, especially
the book is at your house going, yeah, whatever, didn't put me in the suitcase.
Yeah, it's
whatever. Okay, I know you. All mad at you.
That book has yelled at me.
So here's something real cool. Please, Sean, hold that thought. I just wanted to throw this out there. This is another thing that the book is really good for. So reference number 0700, Dangerous Toys from the UK.
I was going to ask about that. I saw that. So
1987, around the same time that I started working with the toys. It's got a guy named Pip Phil bass, Blitz Collin drums, Jerry Lyons vocals. Now stop. Jerry with a G. Jerry Lyons. Doesn't that sound familiar to you guys?
Not
no, that sounds familiar. The singer's name sounded familiar to me. Dave Veal joined in 87. Demo, Red Hot and Dangerous, 1988. There's zero information after that.
Yeah.
So lest be noticed to myself and any of the other Dangerous Toys guys here in Texas, were we able to reference or even Google, because it's 1987?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was probably something that Mark Hale got. He probably saw like an ad in the back of a magazine for like, send us $5 for our demo.
That's right.
And he talks about that in the foreword too, that a lot of the information just came from combing the ads in magazines.
Yeah.
Send me $5 for you. We have a demo. Death Tripper has a demo called Eat Your Guts or whatever. Send $5. And that's how they ended up in there.
If that's not what it was called, that's what it should have been called.
Exactly. That's what it should have been called. I don't think it was called that.
Anyway, so there's two birds in there's many birds of the same at least moniker throughout this. If you're called like Rocks, there's probably 10 bands called Rocks in here.
I saw like multiple versions of Assassin or Assailant, things like that. Yeah.
Any sort of name that you can just read in the Webster's dictionary that sounds good for a rock band, there's going to be 20 of them in here. And he wasn't afraid to just take up 3 pages of 5 different spellings of the word rocks,
Yeah.
if that be your band name, right?
Yeah. One of the things, there was a couple things that caught my attention. One of them was, you guys are familiar with Atom Bomb, right? Um, at one time, he auditioned for Kiss, and he actually wrote a book that I have. It's called 911 is Out of Order or something like that. And it's a pretty interesting book. He talks about auditioning for Kiss and hanging out with Eddie Van Halen. He's a bit of a guitar nerd, so he was chasing around his heroes, much like some of us do. And anyway, his entry, I was surprised to find that 2 guys that had played with him in his band, Atom Bomb, was number 1, Sandy Slavin.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Did you know that right now? I mean, that doesn't matter. We can edit this out. Do you know this, Sean? Like Caton DePena from Hyrax right now is interviewing Sandy Slavin right now on Facebook Live.
Yep, and Sandy, because I was watching that before we dialed in.
Oh, cool.
Sandy talked about playing with Atom Bomb right before I cut it off.
Wow.
So crazy that you brought that up.
Some cool synchronicity happening right now here on Talk Louder. Bada bing.
Sandy Slavin,
carry on, Dave.
Sandy, known to most of us as the drummer on Riot's Fire Down Under. And one of the other guys that played with Atom Bomb that I was not aware of was Jimmy Crespo, who I'm an Aerosmith geek. So Jimmy was in the version of Aerosmith that put out the Rock in a Hard Place record. So I had no idea that those 2 guys spent time with Atom Bomb. That's what this book is full of, that kind of stuff. If you're a geek, you're gonna just turn the page and go, I didn't know that, or I didn't know these guys were worked together. And a lot of times the reason you don't know is because they didn't necessarily put anything out commercially. It's just that's what this book is all about. It's like, oh well, they cut some demos together or something. The guy was in the band for 6 months, but he was in the band. It's like, wow.
Well, that's why we talked about that. Just a little snippet of something that you just said. The reason that our Deep Purple Tree Spectrum episode is such a thick, rich cake is because of basically what you just said about if you're in the band 5 minutes. In my opinion, you're a leaf on the twig, on the branch, on the limb, on the that leads to the trunk that is Deep Purple. And I think that it's worthy, and this book will take you down so many rabbit holes in the same way.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love. I think that it's worthy of, I mean, I can read one page and connect the dots all on one page at least twice.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So Sean, let me ask you, who has been the most elusive autograph up to this point?
Oof. There's 2, and they're local Austin, Texas people.
Then we
that to date I still have not been able to get, that I'm dying to get their signatures. 1, Danny Aaron.
He's in San Antonio.
Still never met him. His picture's in the book.
Okay.
Danny Aaron from Dangerous Toys, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Watchtower bass player. The name just
Doug Keyser.
Doug Keyser.
Yeah.
Missing.
He's a unicorn. So
yeah, he's not at shows. He doesn't go hang out. Dave Pruitt has tried to help facilitate a time or two and just could never get the wires to mesh up. Those are probably I would say for local stuff, the 2 that I'd really like to get just to like help complete. I'd be able to complete, that Dangerous Toys photo. And actually, Jason, I didn't have you sign that Dangerous Toys photo. I just looked at it. I just had you on the Watchtower.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That one we can probably fix.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I can fix that. I know where you live.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and then
to
tie the.
Go ahead.
Just to be able to tie, I love getting full bands, especially if there's a picture. I like to be able to get everybody in the picture when I can. Like when I got Chastain, took 3 different shows, to get everybody that's in that Chastain photo. So it was a CJSS show that I saw in Cincinnati that I went to. I saw Leather in Chicago at Ragnarocker. She signed it. And then when I saw Flotsam a couple of years ago at Come and Take It, Ken Mary, the drummer, signed it. And then I got all my Flotsam stuff too.
So before we started taping, we were talking a little bit offline, and you were mentioning Tracy Guns and Bobby Liebling, I believe is how you say his name, from Pentagram.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about both of those guys and what you were telling us about their reaction to the book.
So I'll start with Tracy. He was playing a show on 6th Street. Oh man, I can't remember the name of the place, but if you're facing Emos on 6th Street, when it was still there, to the right, it was kind of they had an outdoor stage on the patio. They had a little indoor spot too. It was called like Gibson's or something like that for a little while. I think you were at that show, Dave.
I wasn't, but he played with Rudy Sarzo. Is that right?
Yeah, Rudy was there. Sean Duncan was playing that show. The guy from Rapid Tears, Canadian band that also got in there. That guy almost cried when he saw that somebody knew who Rapid Tears was. Like he just freaked out. But Sean introduces me to Tracy because they've obviously known each other since they were probably little kids. And he goes, "Hey man, check out this book, whatever." And Tracy's just like, I need one of these. And I was like, I have a spare one at the house. This was like 3:00 in the afternoon when they were doing load ins, and Sean just said, "Hey, come hang out." Got all the signatures. I was like, "I'll be at the show tonight. I'll bring you a copy." And he goes, "How much?" And I was like, "There is no how much. Like, you've provided me with a lifetime." Like, I'm a big LA Guns fan.
Yeah.
I was like, and I loved his Killing Machine solo album. I was like, "You provided me with a lifetime worth of listening. I would never, ever charge any musician that's in this book that I meet, their time, taking 30 seconds to sign it, is worth a copy of that book if they ask for one."
Yeah.
So,
You heard it here on Talk Louder. That is a fan lovingly bleeding all over the place and glad to be bleeding on you.
yeah, I mean, I live for that shit, and I love meeting these guys, and 99% of everybody I've met has been cool, other than a few folks here and there. So Tracy was just super cool. He's just a sweet guy all around. You can just tell his demeanor, and he's just a really chill guy.
Yeah.
The Pentagram one, that was a great story. I was still living downtown on Red River across from Mohawk. I'm walking up the street just to go get something to eat before the Pentagram show at Emo's. And I see them crossing the street towards Mohawk. And I just see this like stringy hair and like the way the sun was hitting and all that. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's Bobby." So I'd stop him in the middle of the street. I almost got run over by a tractor trailer truck or whatever. And we're talking, and I was like,
there's that labor of love happening every second. Yeah.
And I was like, "I don't have the book on me." I was like, "Stand here for 5 minutes." Like, I literally ran. Like, I'm fat. I don't run. I ran into my apartment, grabbed the book, and then I took them to dinner. They were going to go to Jaime's, and I was like, "You don't want to go there because you'll end up having to leave the stage to use the bathroom 24 times." Took them to Chupacabra, bought the whole band dinner. It was Victor, the whole works. Bobby sees the book, and I'm getting him sign it, and he goes, "Is UFO in there?" And I was like, "Of course UFO's in there. It's like his favorite band of all time." And he flips to the UFO page, and he goes, I need a copy of this book, in his incoherent kind of rambling way. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Yeah." I'll bring a copy to the show tonight, or bring it just back to the bus when we're done here. And he goes, "What do you want for it?" And I was like, "Nothing, Bobby." He goes, "Well, you bought us dinner and all." I was like, "No, I didn't. Whatever." He goes, "Just go to the merch booth and take what you want." He goes, "You want 10 t-shirts? Take 10 t-shirts, take 20 posters." He goes, "I have to have this." And I was like, "You got it. We're done, buddy."
How many Pentagram fans would have lost their minds just hearing Bobby say that to anyone?
Right.
Obviously Bobby fell in love with the book the way that Dave and I have, and that everyone who just like I said, because of your completely innocent and real and true intention on introducing the book to people, and just the idea of something like this. uh I really wish we could call this Hale person and tell him what you have done for him and just for rock and roll by walking around and and running a mile and researching yourself and autographs and buying the book has its own satchel. It's like Frodo in the ring. you're 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 on a mission, and you're carrying the cross. You're delivering the goods.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I go to Chicago for the Ragnarocker Festival, like I've been 3 times. We played it once with my ex band, and that's when I got to meet, Steve Grimmett and all these other guys. And
work with, by the way,
for the 2 years after, everybody at that show is like, oh, there's the guy with the book. And then they're like, hey, this guy was in Cyanide or whatever. You need to meet this guy. So get the hookups when I go out of town with people who know what I'm looking for. So it's pretty cool. That kind of networking part has been really cool.
Well, you seem to travel a little bit, and when you can, I'm certain that you pack the book. And where have you gone? I know you said you went to a couple of years ago, Keep It True, but you didn't take the book. Where have you gone just in the past, I don't know, 3 to 4 years maybe, where you were able to pack the book and tap someone on the shoulder and have them sign the book?
Frost and Fire Festival.
Oh, there you go. Southern California?
Yeah, Ventura.
Okay, perfect.
And over the course of like the 3 or 4 years that they did it, Neil Turbin, which I'm connected through Doug Morrison, because they were in Turbin together originally with Dave McClain.
With Dave McClain, right. Texas legend, right?
Who I still don't have. I still need Dave McClain in the book too. Betsy from Bitch, who I got to spend time with on an outdoor patio in Studio City after the fest, or actually after the fest. She wasn't playing, but Jarvis got me hooked up with her, and we met for an hour out on patio. Totally cool. Sirith Ungol. Oh my God.
That's all huge already, because Bitch was like a Genesis. Sirathungal was a Genesis. Those are just bands that sort of started an entire landfall along with Metal Blade.
Yeah, Mindless Sinner from Sweden, like original lineup. I got like insane. One of the guys was actually taking a shit in his hotel room when I knocked on the door. We were all staying in the same hotel. And he was like, well, the singer's on the toilet. And I was like, I'll wait. He goes, no. They're just like super nice, all excited about it. Like, no, we'll take it to him right now. I was like, oh man, he's going to flag the book, George Costanza style, whatever, their signature on it. Everything smelled fine, whatever. But yeah, just a bunch of odd stuff like that. It's great. Dave I got in DC, but I've got some like super big names in there. I've got some people who are no longer with us in there.
Yeah.
Just heartbreaking when we get to some of those stories.
Well, your first signature is no longer with us.
That's right.
Right. Where did you get Lombardo's sig?
So it's when Dave was playing with Testament on the Gathering tour.
Oh wow. Okay.
Steve DiGiorgio was playing bass. One of my buddies in Virginia Beach was friends with Steve, so he got us hooked up on the guest list, and we got up there super early to hang out.
Do you have Steve in the book?
Yep. Yes, DiGiorgio signed it. Got James Murphy, because he was playing guitar for Testament at the time. He signed it, and Steve just goes, "Hey, Dave's around here somewhere with his wife and kid. Just hang out for a minute. He'll probably just pop up." So we're just all hanging out on the bus, mid-afternoon. Next thing you know, here comes Dave and his wife and his kid, who was like 7, 8, or 9. And it's the picture of the band, like over the girl, half naked girl. And they're all like, ah. And Steve's like, hey, Dave, come here, check this out. You need to see this. So Dave looks at it and he goes, oh man, that picture. And I was like, yep, that's the one. I was like, would you mind signing? He goes, no, man, be glad. Like, super sweetest, nicest guy ever. But he takes the picture down and like holds it down in front of his son. He goes, which one's daddy? And the kid like automatically like, oh, yeah. He goes, Dad, I've seen this picture 100 times. You're right there. And he goes, yep, that's me. And he just signed Dave Lombardo, 99. So like for me, that was like, oh, because Dave's one of my favorite drummers of all time.
Oh yeah, he's legend and arguably created an entire style of drumming. So
for sure.
So I want to talk about this real quick. This is a little bit all over the place. So the foreword is done by Ted Nugent, and it's a full page or two. Like he didn't just say, "Yeah, it's a cool book. Just check it out." You know what I mean? He wrote more than that. But I want to say, this is not just hard rock or metal. It's like Gangrene is in here.
Cheap Trick is in there.
Yeah. So it's power pop. It's punk rock. It's sleaze. It's dirty. Just good old, classic rock. Whatever Deep Purple is, they're the everything, right? To me,
Right.
they're the seed, right? But when you look up Deep Purple and you look up Black Sabbath, it has every other band in the book mentioned because
right,
they're
7 degrees of separation.
Right, exactly. They're the Kevin Bacon, right? So, the guy, this David Hale. So I wonder if there's a connection between the publisher, which is in Ann Arbor, Ted Nugent, who's from the area, with this writer.
That's you're connecting some dots there. That's not a bad theory.
I mean, I may have thought about that before because I've had this book for some time now, and it's just kind of it's on the shelf and it's lingering. It's in my collection of other really cool things in my life, and I just wonder if it's from that part of the states that this guy may have been obviously some kind of rock nerd on top of a journalist on top of he was in the industry somehow. Yeah, Dave raised his hand. I'm talking sound like I'm talking about Dave, right?
So I know somebody who's connected to Nugent. Paul Arnold from At War has gone hunting with Ted Nugent before.
Oh, okay.
And I think they still stay in touch every now and then. I might see if I can backdoor something with Paul to say, hey, can you just ask the question, who was this guy? And are you still in touch with him? Like,
yeah.
Because man, I would fly if like this guy was open to meeting, I would fly to wherever he was and obviously get him to sign it. I'd have him sign it for sure.
Yeah, of course. And interview him and go, dude, do you realize what you've done? And this is a thankless job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Completely.
This is a labor of love. This is an incredible moment. I don't want to like totally pump the brakes here, but Sean, would you be up to having an episode 2 that had a second Talk Louder episode where we talk more about the book?
Yeah, as many as you need. I mean, we really just scratched the surface on this thing.
That's correct, because there's a lot of information per band. Just if you start at A, we're not going to get to the B's.
Yeah.
Because of the connections and the dots that we're going to get there. And I really feel like, and Jared was mentioning this earlier, that if we literally talked to you, kind of played ping pong back and forth about all of the signatures you have in there, it's another show. It's another show.
Yeah.
We could do a series.
Jason, real quick, while you've got the book in your hand and you just mentioned Jared, and I wanted to see, let's test the book. Jared, of course, was in a band called Pariah. Is Pariah listed in there?
I've already checked. He rapped, the writer, the creator of this,
finished before they were
Headbangers. It's on the cusp. It happened just after. Again, everybody, I want you to know what's the writer's name, Sean?
Mark Hale.
Mark Hale.
Yeah, Mark.
This book is called. We've been referencing that we've been calling this the book, right? It's called Headbangers, the worldwide mega book of heavy metal bands. Even though, to be clear, I just mentioned that Cheap Trick and Gangrene and DRI, and so it's got anything that it's rock is in here. But no, Jared and Pariah are not in the book because he wrapped it just prior to when 89, 90, 91. I think he was by 91 he was probably done his research with
Yeah,
his
he even
research.
says as much in the first few pages of the book. There's a bit of a disclaimer that says, "Hey, just so you know, I had to cut it off at some point, and I forget what the magic number was or the magic year, but yeah, he does make it clear that obviously it's not going to be an all inclusive, but he's trying to at least give you a sense of what the time frame is that he captured."
Yeah, me and Jared were hanging out, and I was wondering, and me and Jared were going back and forth about just there's a lot of Texas is giant,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of Texas like metal bands and underground bands. I mean, a band from Austin called EKU is in here. They don't have all the names because all the names, I guess, were not listed on the materials that were sent in or that he discovered. But Steve Holland, the guitar player, one of the many guitar players from that band, is mentioned EKU, and that's just rare. And like a lot of people would go, "Well, who are they, and what is that?" Well,
yeah,
they had a demo out as in '86, and that's what that is. They made the reference, so he shoved anything and everybody he could into this
It's
500
insane.
yeah,
on,
542 page manuscript.
yeah,
Yeah, the Dallas Warlock is in there.
Yeah,
Just
here's what I was going to say is San Antonio, the band Presence that had Sean Psalm in
yeah.
it, is not in the book. They are not in the book, and here's the deal: they were worthy of being in this book because of the time frame 85, 86, right? Earlier 80, 83, 84, 85, 86, and because they had management that worked for not Stone City but maybe Stone City, and there was a connection between promoters that would book touring bands through Texas, and Presence got to open for Legs Diamond, and they got shoved on that Metallic Armored Saint gig here in Austin because Wasp canceled. That's a whole other episode, but the point is they're not in here, and they coulda, shoulda, woulda, but like the disclaimer you mentioned, Dave, the guy couldn't do. I mean, how fast was he walking and running and diving into demo tapes and referencing and cross referencing and fact checking and double checking and
yeah.
Jesus.
I do want to say, since you brought up Texas bands, I was happy to see As is listed in there.
Yeah.
And As Is, of course, was fronted by Robert Wagner, who's a friend of ours. And
Yeah.
his dad, of course, was Dick Wagner, who played for Alice Cooper and
So
Session.
is Robert's name in the book?
They call him Bob. Actually, they misspelled his name, and they don't call him Robert. They call him, I think it's, I almost want to say they called him Bog or something. They
Weird.
misspelled his name, and they were trying to call him Bob.
Okay.
It's Are you looking, Sean? It's
It's a typo.
Aziz, two Z's.
Yeah, that's
And
Robert.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
And
that's
I know
Robert.
Robert.
That's
I've met
Robert.
him several times.
Oh, good. So you need to pack up the book and go to one of his
Oh,
shows.
Hey,
oh,
He
Dave,
played
thank
last
you.
night. He played last night at Moon Tower.
Yeah.
today.
He's listed as Bog Wagner.
It's today. So Sean, you could roll over to Moon Tower probably right now and catch him there.
On at Moon Tower today from 3:00 onward. He's playing a gig.
I'm not gonna be able to make that.
But he's around. He's local,
I see him all the time.
and that's
I had no idea that was him.
That's
Well,
him.
see, once again, the knowledge of nerds prevails, and the book gives us a reason to probably have a part 2 on Talk Louder about the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would definitely like to touch on some of the guys who have died that are in here.
Yes. Yes, of course we can. Dave, what you got?
Well, I just wanted to say thanks, number one, to Sean for joining us today and sharing some of his travels and his adventures and the book, as we all call it. And thank you for giving me my own copy back in 2011 for my birthday. I'm a proud owner, one of the few proud owners, as is Jason. But yeah, we do need to have you back, and I'd have you back another, maybe even a third time, and just pick your brain about your record collection, because something we didn't even talk about today was, your extensive knowledge of vinyl. You're one of these collectors that goes out of his way to get import versions and typo versions and misprints. And I don't think you have just a normal store bought record in your collection. Everything you have is unique in some special way. So we should probably have you back and talk about that at some point too.
Yeah, real quick, Sean, you have something you call the metal files. Tell us about that.
So the metal files I finally put together on like a WordPress site, themetalfiles.com. And mostly it was just reviewing concerts that I went to. Sometimes doing album reviews, but it was mostly like, go to Ragnarok or in Chicago, see a show. Iron Maiden comes to town, review the show.
But you're always including the set list that the bands played that night.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And more or less doing it for my own memory.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes like somebody like they played that song that night. I'm like, no, they didn't. I would have remembered that. And then I go back and like, oh man, I even talk about them playing that song, in my review. So I'm doing it for my own posterity's sake, so that if I get hit in the head somewhere down the road and I can't remember anything, well, maybe something there will trigger.
Just count on getting hit in the head, whether you get hit in the head or not.
No, that's true.
Should happen.
And then I just started on Facebook. I've got a Metal Files page, and what I've been doing is going A to Z with every autograph that I've got, posting the autograph and then explaining when and where I got it. Some with some photographic proof of me with the band or whatever, but it's also helping jar memories for me.
So tell people where they can find that on Facebook. That's under the Metal Files or under your name?
It's under the Metal Files. It should pop right up.
The Metal Files on Facebook, and you're posting photos of the pages that are signed, and you're telling the backstory behind getting the signature, and it's really cool. I'm glad you started doing this, because you've only started it recently, and I see it, and of course I'm a nerd, so I get into the story behind it, and I think it's pretty cool, and I think other people listening to the show would dig it too. So the Metal Files on Facebook is sort of an extension of what we're talking about here today.
Yeah. Please, by all means,
Well, we're definitely going to have you back, man. This has been a lot of fun. Over somewhere between 300 and 400 signatures, you said, in, quote, the book, also known as Headbangers, which is its proper title. It is a fairly hard to find reference book. I don't know how many copies are out there, but Sean's got his, autographed big time, and he's still working on it. So we'll have you back. We'll talk some more about it. But meantime, let's move on to our shot of rock and roll. My shot of rock and roll for you today, Sean, is besides the book, what would you say are maybe your two other most prized pieces of rock and roll memorabilia in your collection?
Oh, wow. Okay, first one's easy. I've got a pair of Nicko McBrain drumsticks from 1988 from a drum clinic where he let me play his drums, and with him standing right next to me. Like, I'm a senior in high school. I wasn't crying, but I should have been. He's my favorite drummer of all time. He let me play his drums at his clinic. Only me and one other person got to play. And there's only maybe 30 people there because Whitesnake was in town that night and everybody was at Whitesnake. So it's a combination. I've got the drumsticks, and I just kept them in my hand when I left his kid. And he goes, "You can keep those." And I was like, "Yeah, you're going to have to fight me for them." And he also gave me a bottle of Heineken that night that, I didn't drink back then. I made a comment about Tommy Aldridge, and that's a story all in its own. And he goes, "Hey, Steve Gadd, his drum technician," he goes, "Give that guy a beer." So gave this ice cold Heineken that I never opened, had him sign it after the thing. So I've still got that signed sitting on top of my record shelf.
Nice.
So I'll just call it, those two are like that's pretty huge for me.
Wow. Do you have anything for me and Jason that you want to?
I've got a parting shot, and it's a very important one, and I think it'll be important to all of us.
Awesome. This is a surprise.
I think it was 8 years ago today, we lost Jeff Hanneman.
Yes.
Wow.
So I'm repping the Slayer shirt in his honor today. And I'm just going to ask, what are y'all's number one favorite Slayer song, if you can pick one? I thought about this all morning, and I still don't know if I can pick one, but I've got one.
That's why I hate this.
Wow. God, there's so many. I mean, Angel of Death is the obvious one, but I don't want to give you the obvious. I might go with Mandatory Suicide.
That's pretty serious.
That's a pretty good one. I've always enjoyed that one, and I always liked Behind the Crooked Cross.
Yeah,
that's kind of a more obscure track, I guess.
I like old stuff, but the South of Heaven record is sort of an unsung record. So there's stuff on there, but dude, At Dawn They Sleep is like much like Mandatory Suicide. It's got cool turnarounds, like the time signature changes a little bit in both of those songs actually. And it's not just balls out the whole time. So there's time, there's 2 or 3 different time signature changes in the song, in both of those songs. Well, maybe not Mandatory. Yeah, Mandatory there's 2 or 3. And At Dawn They Sleep there might be 4.
it's very dynamic.
They're on the ceiling, they're in the valley. They're on the ceiling, they're in the valley, but there's also like 2 other parts of the song that are different tempos. So you can't play that song with a click track unless the click track is programmed. So that's what's awesome about it's like Led Zeppelin kind of shit. You know what I mean? They want to drag the beat here on purpose, but then when they get to the chorus, they want to be on top of it. So it's this different. And who knew that we'd talk about Slayer in that form? But I guess if I have to pick one today, it'll be At Dawn They Sleep.
That's a good.
Today I'm going with probably Black Magic. That was the first Slayer song I ever heard. Even though the Rain and Blood album was the one that really made me a true fan of Slayer. Between Black Magic, Tormentor, and Chemical Warfare. And because they were on those Metal Blade compilations too, so they were just in that flow of stuff I was listening to, but I didn't really become a huge Slayer fan until Rain and Blood.
Which Metal Massacre are Slayer featured on?
Man, I want to say that the first one,
2 or 3.
I'm going to say 2, but it's probably 3. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, neither do I. I'm not going to claim that I even know that.
I can go grab my copy real quick and look, but
it might be worth it. We can edit. Go get it.
It looks like it was probably Metal Massacre 3 with Aggressive Perfector.
Yeah, you're right.
I couldn't find my copy of 2, but usually you only got one shot on those, so looks like it was probably 3 with Aggressive.
Well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's reference the book because it might tell us. So this is where it's gonna. This is gonna be fun. See, I'm such a nerd. I'm looking and I'm going starfighters, and then I just want to read about starfighters.
Right. that's what happens.
Sound barrier. I want to read about sound barrier. Okay. Stand by. Here we go. L.A., California. All right. Jeff Hanneman, Tom Araya, Kerry King, Dave Lombardo. Tony Scaglione.
John found it. It's volume 3.
It's volume 3.
Volume 3. Great. Okay, you looked it up. Yeah, you were right. Demo had 3 tracks: Aggressive Perfector, Metal Massacre 3, Inagata Devita Less Than Zero soundtrack. It's just going off on shit. All right, cool.
There you got it. So
Yep.
Jared wanted to ask us real quick. He just, our producer just shot us a note. Sean, he wants to know, on the theme of Slayer, how many times have you seen them?
Not enough. Unfortunately, and this is just because of the location that I lived and my age. I mean, I'm 51, but Slayer didn't play our town until Seasons in the Abyss. So I didn't get to see pre-Rain and Blood Slayer, which I would have died to have seen. At that show, it's hard to kind of tell, but my nose is crooked because of a mosh pit. And I've had a doctor offer to fix it, and I was like, well, I just like to be able to show the story, not just talk about the story.
Hey,
For me getting my nose broken in a mosh pit when I fell on a guy.
Wow.
But I think I've seen them 5 times, maybe.
All right.
Twice with Lombardo, and all the other times with Bostaph.
I think Jason's got the best story of all. The first time you saw him, Jason?
Yeah, the first time I saw Slayer, I was on the bill
opening for him.
Yeah. So that was November 29th, Thursday, November 29th, 1984. Show No Mercy was out. Haunting the Chapel had just come out, and Hell Awaits was not out yet. But they were playing material from Hell Awaits. They played Hell Awaits, Hardening of the Arteries. You know, they were starting to write stuff like that for the next record. But they were, you know, which came later, I think. Hardening of the Arteries. I'm not sure what record that was on, but they were playing Hell Awaits. They had Hardening of the Arteries, I think. And I only know that because some friends of mine talked to them about, give me some new song type, you know, just like shooting the fat with them. Let's see. They had just taken the makeup off.
Yeah.
Like the legend goes, they went and played the Bay Area and everyone was making fun of them.
Yeah, Ruthie's. They got dogged out at Ruthie's.
Yeah, and that's a legendary. So, but it's the same tour. That's their first tour, was in '84. So.
Yeah, it's 4 times I've seen them. Only once with Lombardo, unfortunately.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
I have pictures that I snapped backstage of Hanneman and Kerry King right behind me on my coffin case here, that that I took on that show date. That was Militia Watchtower, LA Slayer, and then it was either the next night or the night after that they did the infamous Via Fontana with Slayer versus Slayer, also with Militia and Cyrus.
I think it was Cyrus.
Yeah,
I've got a copy of that flyer.
Yeah, but then I saw them at Liberty Lunch. I saw Slayer at Liberty Lunch just the next year. With I think Victory and
German Victory.
Yeah, maybe
with Will Hoffman.
Maybe Grim Reaper.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I didn't really care about who else was on the bill, but I think it was like a promoter. There was a talent buyer that was putting that together for them. It was a summer tour. And I have pictures of me hanging with them, with me hanging with Dave Lombardo and Tom. And what I remember about that gig is, and that was Hell Awaits tour. There's no barricade, and the stage at Liberty Lunch was low, like knee high maybe. So you know, mosh pit happens. Your face is gonna slam into their chest. You're going to hit. So Tom's singing and the microphone was hitting him in the face, you know, so he has to stop playing, you know, thumbing his bass and just move his hand, you know, to keep the microphone from hitting him in the teeth. So while he's holding the microphone, I'm I'm thumbing his strings while he's holding the mic so he doesn't get his teeth broken out by the people hitting the mic stand, hitting him in the face, right? So
Yeah.
he's holding on to the mic, and I'm going. It only happened on a couple of songs, but at one point he's playing the kind of hammering the notes on the neck and looking down, watching me and kind of laughing as I'm like thumbing the strings. Well, but it wasn't anything. It was like no one even noticed. No one around because it's just chaos, right?
Yeah.
So I'll never forget that. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then I think after that they blew up.
Yeah. We saw them once together, actually, Jason.
Yeah.
The Jagermeister tour, when you got us hooked up in the box.
That's right. Jim Florentine.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And Lombardo was playing on that one, so I've seen Lombardo twice.
That's right. And that was what year?
That was 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, I got this laminate that I got from San Antonio.
Yeah, we have that too.
I had Carey and Hanneman signed it. You can't really tell because it's black on black, but it's actually autographed. I think I know the first time I saw Slayer, I did a stage dive. It was my second stage dive ever, and it was at the Showcase Event Center in San Antonio. And I can never, I need to look it up. I can never remember for the life of me if it was the Rain and Blood tour or South of Heaven, but it was one of those two. And I got on the stage and I dove off and into the chaos, and I still have the ticket stub. And I swear it looks like it went through the washing machine. You can't even read it. It's just a wadded up water.
It probably did.
Paper. Yeah, it's from all the sweat and the mosh pit and all the, it speaks for itself. You can just tell it was a crazy show. It says Slayer without even saying Slayer anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. I saw, this is kind of a good one. I saw Slayer in, just a couple of years after that. I was in Los Angeles. I saw them at LA Sports Arena or something, opening for Judas Priest on Ram It Down tour. So it was like 87, 88.
Probably 88, I think.
Yeah. So it was Slayer, and I think that's South of Heaven. It was just Slayer and Judas Priest. There was no other, as far as I recall, there was no other bands.
Wow.
So that's like seeing two gods,
Absolutely.
godly bands. That's not my favorite Judas Priest record by any means, but I got to hear classic Judas Priest songs next to at even at that early in the game for Slayer, classic Slayer songs played on Slayer's home turf. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting next to Slash watching Slayer from the soundboard.
Nice.
Like literally Slash is like, elbows touching watching Slayer and Judas Priest.
Yeah.
LA Sports Arena. I'm pretty sure maybe the Forum. I'm gonna stick with LA Sports Arena.
That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I saw that Jagermeister thing with you guys, and then trying to think of other times that I saw Slayer.
We all saw him at ACL together.
That's right. So I'm going to say probably 5 times, and there may be one that I'm just forgetting.
Oh man, I've seen him at least 5 times. And
La Zona Rosa.
Yeah, there was that one.
With Hatebreed. Hatebreed.
I saw him with Hatebreed in San Antonio. I wouldn't doubt if I've seen Slayer between 8 and 10 times. I mean, I never saw him as early as you did, Jason, but once I saw him, whether it was Rain and Blood or South of Heaven, then I rarely missed them whenever they came through.
Well, I
was the final tour at Amphitheater as well.
I was lucky enough to see them when, in the Genesis, right? When they're doing what I'm trying to do. They have a record out. Yay! They borrowed mom's credit card. Yay, they're on a tour. That kind of a thing. I got to see them when they drew 150 people, and that was kick-ass,
Yeah, they were underground. They were still an underground band.
That's right. So but because of the way things go, it was soon after that it was very, very different. I remember something else about the show that I got to open for him was it was like literally maybe a week or two after that now infamous show at Joe Freeman Coliseum with Exciter, Merciful Fate, and Motorhead on the No Remorse tour with Pete Gill from Saxon on drums.
I saw them at Joe and Harry with you. It was Mastodon, Children of Bodom, Slayer, and Lamb of God. We went to that show together in San Antonio.
That's right.
Yeah. See, now that we're talking, it's up. There's another one. There's another.
Damn,
one.
that's like 7 times or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hey, you do a shot of rock and roll. You start with Slayer, and you won't get us to shut up. So
then you add another 45 minutes to the show.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, we haven't done a Slayer episode yet, and we totally could, and it'll probably be one where we would have a guest or two on, so we could kind of go back and forth and hear some campfire stories about Slayer.
Yeah.
What you got, Dave?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank Sean once again for joining us today. Had a great conversation. Enjoyed picking your brain about the book, and we will do it again, I'm sure. Want to remind everyone listening, hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also follow us on Facebook, iTunes, and Spotify. I'm Metal Dave Glessner with my co-host Jason McMaster and special guest Sean Weingartner signing off. We'll see you next time on Talk Louder.